morning, fellow constitutionalists. This is your host, Dan Clements of the Dan Clements Show. And I wanted to read this article to you, and this will be posted up in my Exemplar Intentus vlog. We were talking last week about immigration, and there's been a lot of arguments and a lot of discussion going on about illegal immigration in the country. And as usual, there's the normal players. You have conservatives and you have liberals, and you have libertarians out there that are talking about it. Liberals, leftists, and libertarians have about the same view of open borders, and it doesn't have much of a cost to the country. And conservatives, more conservative folks like myself, especially constitutional conservatives, we tend to look at other costs, not just monetary costs, but as this article here by Victor Davis Hanson of the HooverInstitute.org talks about here, it's the civic cost of illegal immigration. I'd like to read this for you, make a couple comments after I'm done reading it or while I'm reading it, as I want to do sometimes. The arguments for ignoring illegal immigration are as well known as the self-interested motives that drive it. In the abstract, open border advocates argue that in a globalized culture, borders are becoming reactionary and artificial constructs. They should not impute more natural ebbs and flows of they should not interrupt, more natural ebbs and flows of migrant populations. More concretely, an array of vested interests see advantage in dismantling the border. Employers in hospitality, construction, food processing, and other agriculture prefer hardworking, low-wage immigrants whose social needs are often subsidized by the government and who are reluctant to organize for higher wages. The Democrat Party welcomes in impoverished immigrants from Latin America and Mexico. It hopes to provide generous social welfare assistance and thereby shepherd new arrivals and their offsprings into the salad bowl of victimization and identity politics, and thereby change the electoral map of key states from red to blue. La Raza activists see unchecked illegal immigration as useful in maintaining a large pool of unassimilated and poor foreign nationals who look to group leaders, thereby ensuring the continuance of what has become an industry of ethnic activism and tourism. Mexico, which is now offering advice to illegal immigrants on how best to avoid U.S. federal immigration authorities, has the most to gain by porous borders. It envisions the United States as a relief valve destination to export its own poor and desperate rather than to have them agitate and demand costly social services from Mexico City. And I've talked about this many, many times since 2008, folks, on the show. Mexico enjoys some $25 billion in annual remittances predicated on the unspoken assumption that its poor and hardworking expatriates can only afford to send such vast sums out of the United States through the magnanimity of the American social welfare system that helps subsidize families to free up hard-earned cash. Mexico has learned that its own expatriates are loyal proponents who romanticize Mexico the further away and longer they are absent from it. Yet lost in this conundrum are the pernicious effects of illegal immigration on the idea of citizenship in a consensual society. In the Western constitutional tradition, citizenship was based upon shared assumptions that were often codified in foundational constitutional documents. The first pillar of citizenship is the idea that the nation state that has the sole right to create and control its own borders. The duty of all Western constitutions, dating back to those of Greek city-states, was to protect their own citizens within clearly defined and defensible borders. Without a finite space, no consensual society can make rules and laws for its own, enhance and preserve commonalities of language and culture, and raise a military to protect its own self-interest. Borders are not normally artificial or post-colonial constructs, but natural boundaries that usually arise to reflect common bounds of language, culture, habit, and tradition. These ties are sometimes fragile and limited and cannot operate on universal terms. Indeed, they become attenuated when borders disappear and residents not only have little in common, but lack the mechanisms or even the desire to assimilate and integrate their migrant populations. When borders are fluid and unenforced, it inevitably flows that assimilation and integration also becomes lax as society loses a sense of who or even where their residents are. And the idea that the Bill of Rights should apply to those beyond the U.S. borders may be a noble sentiment, but the practical effect of such utopianism is to open a Pandora's box of impossible enforcement, affronts to foreign governments, endless litigation, and diversions of resources away from protecting the rights of citizens at home. Residency is also confused with citizenship, but they are no more the same than our guest at a dinner party and the party's host who own the home. A country reverts to tribalism unless immigrants enter it legally, often based on the host's determination of how easily and rapidly they can become citizens and the degree to which they can benefit their adapted country and embrace its customs, language, and habits. The Balkans, Rwanda, and Iraq remind us that states without common citizens' ties affinities, rights, and responsibilities become fragmented and violent. As their diverse populations share no investment in the welfare of the Commonwealth. What plagues contemporary Iraq and Syria is a lack of clearly defined borders and often shifting and migrating populations that have no stake in the country of their residents, resulting in competing tribes that vie for political control to aid their own and punish the other. The second pillar of citizenship is the sanctity of law. What also separates Western and Westernized nations from other impoverished and unsecure states is the notion that citizens entrust their elected representatives with the crafting of laws and then show their fealty by obeying the resulting legislation. The sanctity of the entire legal system in a republic rests on two important corollaries. Citizens cannot pick and choose which laws they obey, either on the grounds that some are deemed bothersome and not in their own self-interest, or on the pretext that they are minor and their violation does not impair society at large. Citizenship instead demands that unpopular and unworkable laws be amended or repealed by the proper legislative and judicial branches of government, not by popular neglect or violation. Once immigration law goes unenforced, there are pernicious ramifications. First, citizens question why the laws are not equally subjected to nullification. If the immigrant is excused from obeying immigration laws, is the citizen likewise exempt from IRS statutes or simple traffic laws? Second, the immigrant himself adopts a mindset that obeying the law is unimportant. Currently, among illegal aliens, there is an epidemic of identity theft, forged government affidavits, and the use of fake Social Security numbers. Open border advocates do not disagree that these violations undermine a society, but instead argue that such desperate measures are needed for impoverished illegal aliens to survive in the shadows. Perhaps, but equally true, is that once an illegal resident discovers that some of the laws of the host are not enforced, then they assume others will not be either. In truth, illegal aliens lose respect for their hosts, concluding that if Americans do not care to enforce their own laws, foreign nationals need not abide by them either. In reductionist terms, when an immigrant's first act when entering the United States involves breaking the law, then all subsequent violations become only that much easier. Besides secure borders and respect for the laws, a third tenet of citizenship is the idea of equal applicability of the law. Citizens in modern Western societies are assured that their laws are applied in the same manner to all citizens, regardless of different class, gender, race, or religion. Illegal immigration insidiously erodes such equality under the law. When millions of foreign nationals reside illegally in the United States, a myriad of laws must be enforced unequally to perpetuate the initial transgression. Illegal immigration does not just imply illegal entry, but also continued illegal residence and all that entails on a daily basis. Sanctuary cities protect illegal aliens from the federal immigration agencies in a way that is not true of American citizens who arrive at airports and must go through customs, with no exemption from federal agents examining their passports and personal histories. If crimes or infractions are found, there is no safe space at an airport exempt from federal enforcement. In California, thousands of illegal aliens have operated automobiles without mandatory insurance, driver's license, and registrations, and in some municipalities are not arrested for such violations. Even as American citizens, we cannot claim such an apparent mitigating circumstances are. In my own vicinity in rural California, there are hundreds of dwellings where multiple families in trailers, sheds, and garages reside, employing illegal water power and sewer hookups. Most are more or less left alone by county authorities. The apparent rationale is that such violations are too chronic and widespread to be addressed, and that it simply does not pay for cash-strapped agencies to enforce the law in the case of those who are unable and unwilling to pay substantial fines. Either way, the nearby citizen who is hounded by the county and federal authorities on matters concerning the proper height of his mailbox or the exact distance between a new lease line and an existing well feels that the laws are unequally applied and loses confidence in the value of his own citizenship. He often sees it either as no real advantage over mere residency or perhaps even a disadvantage. In some, there are several reasons to put a stop to illegal immigration, but among the most important and forgotten is the insidious destruction of what it means to be a citizen. And I've argued about this for years now also, and I'm glad that Mr. Hanson put this out in some words that people can understand. But I've always argued for this, that, if they break the law coming in here, which they did, that's why they're illegal immigrants. And I know people don't like that term, but they're illegal immigrants. They broke the law to get in here. What's to stop them from breaking other laws? And they have. They're illegally on welfare. If they get a job, they're supposed to have a Social Security number. A lot of times either they steal it off of somebody or they give an erroneous Social Security number, and no one bothers to check that. Like Mr. Hanson said, in his community, there's people living off the grid at the graces of other people, and local zoning enforcement officers and water or whatever the authority the municipality has governing these things don't go in and take care of them. What's that make a citizen of the United States feel? That the laws don't apply to these illegals, but they apply to me? That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's unfair. And I know some people say, well, life's unfair, Dan. Life never was guaranteed to be fair. And I know and understand that. But look, I'm a natural born citizen. I'm a Native American here in the United States. And I have rights that are protected under our Constitution because I'm an American citizen. Do other people have God-given rights, the same ones I do? Yes. But because they're not a citizen of the United States, that doesn't necessarily mean that those rights are protected by our Constitution. They may have them, but they're not a citizen who enjoys the protection of those rights. There's a huge difference there. I wish the whole world was a constitutional republic like ours, where people's rights are recognized and also protected. But the simple fact of the matter, they're not. And what I've always argued was, and Mr. Hanson puts it forth in this article, that Mexico has been using the United States as a safety valve for years. Because if we lock our borders up and do not allow illegal crossings on our southern borders or any other borders, that Mexico is going to have to deal with those poor people. They're going to have to do something, because these poor people tend to band together, especially in their own country, and are stirred up by fellow patriots in their country, and they're going to demand certain things of the government, and Mexico is just not willing to deal with that. And why should they? They can deport all these problems to the United States. They can send them north. And in doing so, they know that these people are going to get welfare. There are statistics and studies out there and actual facts from the government of these illegal immigrants living off the welfare state, whether it's a state or federal program. And then they can afford to send $25 billion back to their country, to their families. It happens all the time. Western Union is getting rich off of these repatriations of money back to Mexico. And Mexico loves it, because Mexicans down there get these $25 billion that are being spent down in Mexico, and that's $25 billion they don't have to put out of pocket. Or, again, I wish people would have a basic understanding of economics, especially Austrian economics. If the governments would just get out of the way of economies and allow people the freedom and liberty to do what's best for them and their family, they would see that their economy would take off and a lot of their headaches would just go away. And we're sliding down that slippery slope today in the United States that when it comes to the economy, we're allowing dumb things to happen. We're allowing illegal immigrants not to respect our laws. And if they don't have to respect them, pretty soon there's going to be a bunch of American citizens that feel that they don't have to respect the laws either because they're not being enforced with the illegals that aren't supposed to be here to begin with. Why do they need to bother with me? And that is, in my opinion, a high civic cost of illegal immigration. This has been my exemplar intentus vlog posting for April 5th in the year of the Lord 2017. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless, folks.